There comes a moment when the walls you've been staring at for months, maybe years, start to crack. Not because you forced them down, not because you demanded change, but because something deeper within them shifted. An avoidant doesn't hand over their heart like candy. They've built their identity around protection, distance, and control. But when you see them move from silence to sharing, from absence to presence, you are witnessing one of the most profound acts of love they're capable of. Don't mistake it. Don't minimize it. And above all, don't walk away. See, love isn't about how easy someone makes it for you. Love is about how much courage it takes for them to show up, despite every voice in their head telling them to run. When someone who's wired to escape suddenly chooses to stay, that's not confusion. It's transformation. That's not rejection, it's revelation. What you're seeing is not just a behavioral shift, it's a spiritual leap. It's the moment their soul says, I trust you more than I fear my own wounds. And here's the truth, you've got to recognize that shift when it happens. Because if you judge them by the past, you'll miss the miracle of the present. If you punish them for yesterday, you'll never experience who they're becoming today. Growth is messy. Love is not linear. But if you have the eyes to see beyond the surface, you'll realize the shift is not small. It's monumental. Think about it. For years, maybe decades, their pattern was escape. The second it got too close, they disappeared. Yet now you notice they're staying in the discomfort. They're making the call, sending the text, showing up, opening their world one brick at a time. That's not just effort, that's love in action. And here's what you must understand. They may never say it with flowery words, but when they let you in, when they lower their guard, when they allow their silence to break into honesty, that's their version of I love you. Don't walk away when you see that. Don't demand perfection. Don't assume it's too little, too late. Stay present. Honor the courage it takes, because sometimes the greatest love stories are not written in grand gestures, but in quiet revolutions of the heart. So if you see this shift in an avoidant, understand what's really happening. They're not just moving toward you, they're moving beyond themselves. They're rewriting their own story. And in that moment, they're offering you something sacred, their trust, their presence, their love. When someone who has always lived in the fortress of their own silence begins to share, it is not a random accident. It is not a slip of the tongue. It is a sacred shift. Silence has been their safety net, the invisible wall that allowed them to control vulnerability, to keep the world at a distance, and to protect themselves from the pain of being seen too deeply. For an avoidant, words are not casual tools, they are risks. Every disclosure, every truth revealed is a gamble with their sense of safety. So when you see them moving from silence to sharing, you are witnessing the unraveling of years, sometimes decades of conditioning. It is the sign that their heart is slowly learning to breathe in a new environment, one where love feels less like a threat and more like a possibility. This shift is not loud, it's not dramatic. In fact, if you're not paying attention, you might miss it altogether. It can show up in something as small as them telling you about their day, when before they would have shrugged and said, it was fine. It might appear in the form of them recalling something from their past, something tender or painful, and trusting you enough to hold it without judgment. These small moments are monumental because they represent an opening, a softening of the grip they've always had on their own story. They are letting you in little by little because some part of them believes that you won't use that access to hurt them. Now, here's where so many people miss the point. We live in a world that is addicted to grand gestures, to verbal affirmations, to declarations of love that sound poetic and certain. But for someone who has spent their life in silence, the decision to share even the smallest piece of themselves is the grandest gesture they can make. When they speak, they're not just filling space with words, they are handing you the keys to a door that has been locked shut for years. It's not just communication, it's communion. And if you rush past it, if you dismiss it as not enough, you'll fail to see the love that is embedded in every syllable. What makes this transition so powerful is the courage it requires. For them, silence is predictable. Silence is safe. It keeps them hidden from rejection and disappointment. Sharing, on the other hand, exposes them to the terrifying possibility of being misunderstood, dismissed, or abandoned. So when they choose to share, it means they've calculated the risk and decided that you're worth it. That choice is love in its purest form because it's not motivated by comfort, it's driven by trust. They are saying, without words, I am willing to step into fear if it means being closer to you. This is why you cannot take their words lightly. Every detail, every admission, every glimpse into their inner world is a treasure. It is not about what they say, it is about the fact that they are saying it at all. Because when someone breaks their silence, they are not just giving you information, they are giving you themselves. That's what makes it sacred. If you've ever wanted to know when an avoidant is beginning to love you, don't look for the dramatic confessions. Don't wait for the perfect I love you, wrapped in cinematic flair. Look for the moments when silence becomes sharing, when guardedness becomes openness, when their instinct to withdraw bends into the courage to reveal. Because in those moments, you are not simply hearing words, you are witnessing transformation. You are standing in the presence of someone who is taking their first steps out of the shadows, and they are taking those steps toward you. Consistency is one of the clearest signs that something has shifted within someone who has spent a lifetime living in patterns of avoidance. For an avoidant, distance has always been the default language. It's how they've managed risk, how they've maintained a sense of safety, and how they've ensured that they wouldn't be consumed by the closeness they secretly crave but deeply fear. Distance is predictable, it's what they know. Yet, when that distance starts to shrink and consistency begins to replace unpredictability, it is not just a change in behavior, it's a signal of emotional investment. It's their heart beginning to override their old wiring and choose something braver presence. Consistency looks different depending on where they are in their journey. At first, it might be subtle, replying to your message more regularly instead of disappearing for days, showing up when they say they will, or making an effort to keep in contact without you being the one to chase. These small acts may not feel extraordinary if you compare them to someone who has always been available and reliable, but when you consider their patterns, it's monumental. For someone who has relied on distance as their defense, consistency is an act of courage. It means they are choosing connection over protection. It's important to understand why this is such a significant shift. Avoidants often see relationships as a tug of war between freedom and closeness. When things get too intense, their instinct tells them to retreat, to reset their sense of control by creating space. But when consistency enters the picture, they are pushing against that instinct. They are saying to themselves, I can stay, I can show up, I can remain in this even when it feels overwhelming. That is not a casual decision, it's a declaration of growth. You may notice it not just in their presence, but in their rhythm. They begin to find ways to weave you into their life rather than keeping you on the edges. They might initiate plans instead of waiting for you to do all the work. They might check in not because they feel obligated, but because they genuinely want to maintain connection. Each action may seem small, but collectively they tell a powerful story. They are starting to value consistency more than the comfort of escape. This shift is also a profound act of love because it requires them to confront their greatest fear, dependence. For many avoidants, the thought of needing someone, of showing up again and again for the same person, feels terrifying. It challenges their identity as self-sufficient and untouchable. Yet when they begin to practice consistency, they are choosing to lean into the very thing they've spent years running from. That doesn't mean it's easy for them. In fact, it's often uncomfortable, filled with moments of doubt. But the fact that they do it anyway is what makes it meaningful. When you see this, you must recognize it for what it is. It's not just scheduling or routine, it's a new form of intimacy. It's their way of saying, you matter enough for me to fight my instincts. You matter enough for me to keep showing up. That is love, even if it doesn't look like the movies, even if it doesn't come wrapped in the exact words you want to hear. Consistency is the avoidant's quiet vow. It's their way of proving through action that they are no longer content with distance as their only language. So when you begin to see consistency replacing absence, don't overlook it. Don't measure it against someone else's idea of what devotion should look like. Understand that for them, consistency is not just habit, it's healing. It's a statement that they're no longer willing to disappear when things get real. It's proof that something deeper is unfolding. Because when someone who once relied on absence chooses to stay present, you are not just witnessing a behavioral shift, you are witnessing love that is finally learning how to stay. Vulnerability is the hardest language for someone with avoidant tendencies to speak. They have built their lives around guarding, around presenting strength, independence, and control as shields against the possibility of being hurt. To them, vulnerability feels like a trap, an open door through which rejection, criticism, or abandonment could enter. So when that armor begins to crack, when they start letting you see not just the polished exterior, but the fragile humanity beneath, it is one of the most powerful signs that love is at work, because for them, vulnerability is not weakness, it is the ultimate risk. When an avoidant begins to open up, it often starts in small ways. They might admit a fear, share a past failure, or express uncertainty about the future. These may sound like ordinary conversations, but for someone who has spent a lifetime equating openness with danger, they are anything but ordinary. Each moment of vulnerability is a leap of faith, a statement that says, I trust you with the parts of me I've hidden from the world. They're not just giving you words, they're giving you access to the softest parts of their soul. What makes this shift so remarkable is the inner battle it represents. Avoidants often feel torn between two competing forces, their longing for intimacy and their fear of it. When they let vulnerability win, even for a moment, it means love has become stronger than fear. It means you've created a space safe enough for them to let go of control, if only for a heartbeat. That's not casual. That's not ordinary. That is sacred. And here's the truth. Vulnerability doesn't always look like tears or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it shows up in the subtle act of admitting they need help. Sometimes it's in telling you they missed you instead of pretending they're fine. Sometimes it's in confessing an insecurity they'd rather bury. These are not just words, they are openings, cracks in the armor where light begins to pour through. If you can see them for what they are, you'll realize that these moments are more profound than any grand romantic gesture. Because for an avoidant, vulnerability is the grandest gesture of all. It's also important to understand the cost behind their vulnerability. Each time they open up, they are confronting memories of past betrayals, past rejections, times when their openness was met with judgment instead of acceptance. Their body and mind tell them, don't risk it, stay safe. And yet, when they choose to be vulnerable, they are overriding that warning system. They're essentially saying, I've been hurt before, but I believe you won't hurt me the same way. That's not just love, that's faith. Faith in you, faith in the bond, faith that the story of their life can be rewritten. When you are on the receiving end of this, the way you respond matters more than you might ever realize. Dismissing their vulnerability, mocking it, or minimizing it will reinforce their old belief that opening up is unsafe. But meeting it with compassion, presence, and acceptance can change everything. It can teach them that love doesn't have to mean pain, that openness doesn't have to equal loss. And once they learn that lesson with you, the armor starts to come down in bigger ways. Slowly, their world expands and they allow you into corners of their soul that nobody else has ever touched. So when you notice this shift, when you see the guarded heart begin to reveal itself, don't overlook it. Don't demand more or rush the process. Recognize that every word, every confession, every glimpse of vulnerability is a declaration of love in its truest form. Because when an avoidant lets themselves be vulnerable, they are not just giving you access, they are giving you trust. And trust is the foundation of love that can last a lifetime. Effort is the turning point where love stops being a concept hidden beneath layers of fear and becomes something alive, tangible, and undeniable. For someone with avoidant tendencies, escape has always been the default solution. Conflict arises, they disappear. Emotions grow intense, they pull away. Commitment feels heavy, they retreat into solitude. Escape is their survival strategy, the invisible rope they use to pull themselves out of situations that feel too overwhelming. But when effort begins to replace escape, it is not just a new behavior. It is evidence of transformation. It shows that love has reached a depth strong enough to challenge their most ingrained instinct. You'll notice this shift in moments that at first might seem subtle. Instead of walking out during an argument, they sit down and stay. Instead of ignoring a difficult conversation, they lean in and try to find common ground. Instead of shutting down when you express a need, they take a breath, listen, and attempt to meet you where you are. These are not small gestures. For an avoidant, every ounce of effort is a conscious choice to fight against the pull of escape. It's them saying, I value this connection enough to stay in the fire with you, even when my whole body is screaming to run. What makes this shift so powerful is the intentionality behind it. Escape is easy. It requires no vulnerability, no confrontation, no risk of rejection. Effort, on the other hand, demands courage. It requires them to expose themselves to discomfort, to face the very emotions they've spent a lifetime avoiding. It forces them to acknowledge that love cannot thrive in avoidance. That intimacy is built not on running, but on staying. So when they choose effort, they are not only choosing you, they are choosing growth. They are choosing to step into the very arena they once avoided at all costs. Effort also looks like investment. You may notice them asking more questions about your life, showing genuine interest in your dreams and struggles, or making sacrifices to spend time with you. They begin to prioritize the relationship, carving out space in their world where before there was only self-preservation. That's not accidental, that's not casual. It's the result of an inner dialogue where they've decided that you matter more than their comfort zone. It's love expressed not in words, but in action, in the willingness to inconvenience themselves for the sake of connection. Of course, this shift doesn't happen perfectly or overnight. There will still be moments where the old instinct to escape resurfaces. But the fact that effort now exists at all is evidence of a new pattern forming. It's like watching someone learn to walk again after years of standing still. Every step may be shaky, but each one is proof of determination. And in the context of love, that determination speaks louder than any grand declaration. It says, I may not know exactly how to do this, but I am trying. I am choosing to try for you. When you witness this, it's crucial to recognize how monumental it truly is. For many, effort is expected. It's the baseline of any healthy relationship. But for someone who has lived in the shadows of avoidance, effort is extraordinary. It's their way of rewriting their story, of proving to themselves that they can stay, that they can love, that they can build something lasting without being consumed by fear. And the more that effort is acknowledged, encouraged, and met with grace, the more it grows. So when an avoidant begins to show effort instead of escape, don't overlook it. Don't dismiss it as too little, too late. Understand that behind every attempt lies 1,000 battles you may never see. The battle against fear, against old wounds, against the urge to vanish. Each act of effort is not just about keeping you close. It's about becoming someone who is finally free to love fully. And in that freedom, they are not only choosing you, they are choosing a future where love is stronger than fear. Presence is one of the most powerful indicators that something within an avoidant has shifted. For so long, absence has been their shield. Absence feels safe because it requires nothing of them. No vulnerability, no confrontation, no risk of being fully seen. They can retreat into solitude, into work, into distractions, and convince themselves that distance is strength. But when presence begins to emerge, when they start choosing to be with you rather than apart from you, it is a monumental change. Presence means they are learning to value connection over control, intimacy over isolation, and love over fear. You'll notice this in the way they begin to linger instead of rushing out the door. They stay in the moment instead of looking for the next escape. Where once they may have disappeared for hours or days after things felt too close, now they remain available, even if only in quiet ways. Presence is not always loud. It doesn't always mean grand gestures or constant attention. Sometimes it looks like sit in the same room without needing to fill the silence. Sometimes it's them putting away their phone to give you their full focus. Sometimes it's simply the way they choose to show up over and over when absence used to be their answer. What makes presence such a profound act of love is that it demands self-confrontation. To be present means they cannot hide behind avoidance, cannot escape into distraction, cannot numb themselves with distance. Presence forces them to engage with reality, with their emotions, with your emotions, with the unpredictability of intimacy. And for someone who has built a life around avoidance, this is not a small step. It is a radical declaration: I will not run, I will stay here with you. Presence also carries with it a new kind of energy. When an avoidant is absent, you can feel the void, the lack of engagement, the sense that they are physically there but emotionally gone. But when they begin to show presence, you feel their attention, their awareness, their willingness to connect. It's in the way they listen more deeply, in the way they remember details you've shared, in the way they respond with thoughtfulness instead of indifference. It's not about the quantity of time, but the quality of attention. Presence communicates, you matter, you are worth my focus, you are worth my here and now. This shift is also a sign of healing. Avoidants often believe that solitude is their safest place, that being alone is the only way to avoid being hurt. But presence means they are beginning to challenge that belief. They are discovering that being with someone doesn't have to mean losing themselves, that connection doesn't have to equal pain. It is the slow unlearning of old wounds and the gradual rewriting of love can mean. Each time they choose presence, they're building a new association. Connection as safety, not as danger. It's easy to underestimate the significance of this shift because presence is something many people take for granted. But when you understand the weight of absence in an avoidance life, you see how extraordinary it is when presence starts to become their choice. It means they are not just tolerating closeness, but beginning to crave it. They're not just enduring connection, but investing in it. Presence is the foundation upon which intimacy can grow, the fertile ground where trust, affection, and love can flourish. So when you witness this, honor it. Notice the moments when they stay instead of retreat, when they listen instead of withdraw, when they choose closeness instead of distance. These are not just changes in behavior, they are profound statements of love. Because when someone who once relied on absence begins to give you presence, they are offering you something far greater than time. They are offering you themselves fully, courageously, and without the escape routes they used to depend on. And in that offering lies the truest sign that love has begun to take root in their heart. Love is not measured by what someone says, it is revealed in what they do. For an avoidant, words can often feel unsafe, heavy, or too binding. They may hesitate to say, I love you, because to them, those words carry an enormous weight, a risk of vulnerability that feels unbearable. But if you watch closely, you'll see their love expressed in actions that are quiet yet powerful. Love in action is their true language, the way they communicate devotion without needing to declare it outright. And when this shift occurs, when they begin to show love through consistent choices and thoughtful behavior, it is one of the most profound confirmations that their heart has turned toward you. You may notice it in the little things. They remember how you like your coffee and make it for you without asking. They adjust their schedule so they can spend time with you. They fix something in your home, not because you asked, but because they noticed it mattered to you. These acts may seem ordinary, but for someone who has spent much of their life avoiding closeness, they are extraordinary. Each action is a message, an unspoken declaration. I see you. I care for you. You matter to me. Love in action also shows itself in moments of sacrifice. The avoidant who once prioritized independence above all else begins to compromise, to give up a little bit of comfort or freedom for the sake of the relationship. They may drive across town just to see you for a short while, or they may rearrange their day to help you with something important. These gestures may not be wrapped in romance, but they are love in its most authentic form. For someone who values their autonomy so fiercely, choosing to bend for another person is a sign of deep emotional commitment. Another powerful expression of love in action is protection. They may not always say the right words, but you will notice they step in to shield you when you're vulnerable, defend you when others misunderstand you, or stand by your side when you feel alone. That instinct to protect, to create a sense of safety for you, is not accidental. It comes from a place of genuine attachment. They are showing through action what they may struggle to say aloud, that you are important enough for them to fight for. For avoidance, love in action is also about consistency over time. Anyone can perform a single kind gesture, but when they begin to show up again and again, when their actions align with care on a regular basis, you are witnessing their way of building trust. They are proving that they can be counted on even if they never make dramatic promises. Their love is revealed not in declarations but in patterns, the pattern of choosing you, of prioritizing you, of weaving you into the fabric of their daily life. It is essential to recognize these actions for what they are because they often go unnoticed. Many people look for verbal reassurance and overlook the quiet ways love is being shown. But for someone who fears vulnerability, action often speaks louder than words. They may never be the type to deliver long speeches about their feelings, but when they hold your hand during a difficult moment, when they cook you a meal after a long day, when they show up without you asking, that is their "I love you." Love in action is sacred because it represents integration. It's not just about feelings hidden inside, it's about love taking form in the world. For the avoidant, this shift means they are no longer simply wrestling with emotions in private, they are translating them into choices that impact you. They are allowing their love to break through the barriers of fear and self-protection to become something visible, tangible, and undeniable. And when you see it, when you experience it, you must understand the depth behind it, because when an avoidant chooses to love through action, they are not just giving you gestures. They are giving you the clearest proof that love has moved from theory into reality. When you step back and look at all these shifts, the silence turning into sharing, the distance becoming consistency, the armor cracking into vulnerability, the instinct to escape giving way to effort, the absence transforming into presence, and love showing itself in quiet but undeniable action, you begin to see the miracle that is unfolding. These are not random changes. They are signs of love that has fought its way through fear. They are proof that a guarded heart is learning to trust, to connect, to risk, and to grow. And if you can recognize them, if you can honor them, then you have the chance to experience a kind of love that is raw, authentic, and deeply transformative. Because when an avoidant begins to shift in these ways, they're not just changing for the sake of the relationship, they're rewriting their story, and you get to be part of that sacred journey. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your energy to this message. May it remind you to see love not only in words, but in actions, not only in perfection, but in progress. And may you carry this wisdom into your own relationships with compassion, with patience, and with the strength to recognize love even in its quietest forms.